So moved.
Thank you, Bob. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Pete. All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to read the agenda and then we'll get started for tonight. First, we're going to start with the recent MSBA meeting and talk about enrollment projections. I hope everyone got a chance to look over the data that was posted with the meeting packet. We're going to look at it now and talk about it, but I hope you got a preliminary chance to look at it and think about it. Then we'll have any discussion or thoughts about how Medfield Day went. We did take a tour last week at Pine Hill School, so we could share a little bit about that. Communication subcommittee update, future agenda topics, and public participation. And I just want to say, when we get to the enrollment projections by MSBA, on the agenda it says a possible vote. We will discuss it, and then we'll do public participation before we vote. So if I forget, please remind me before we get to a part, if we decide we're going to vote. I have a little announcement before we start, which is on a...
We have people here to vote.
Yes. We have 6 and 2 online.
We gotta put one on or two on?
Oh, I was counting on you. So we don't, because she's not a voting member.
Somebody else comes.
Okay. People start texting other people and see if they come. So we're missing Robert, Meredith, Michelle. No, Michelle's there. Leo.
Yeah, well, upper left.
Oh.
And then we're one short, because Mike has everybody, so.
Well, we only have 11.
Yeah.
So, actually, we only have 11 now. We don't have 12. So
It doesn't, your quorum is on the full membership of the committee.
So we have to be like we have 12, even though we don't.
Correct.
Okay, so we do need 8. So we have 7.
Well, no, we do have 50%.
Eileen, we can open the meeting, but Eileen Murphy is a non-voting member.
Oh, 5, 6, 7,
So we can do the whole agenda, the whole meeting. We just can't vote on the enrollment. And we actually really want to vote tonight if we get there, because then we could let MSBA know. So,
okay.
Leo, Robert, Meredith, Postmaster.
Leo, Robert, and Mary, those 3.
That's enough to...
8, 9,
One
10.
more. We have
Let's
11.
one more. Who are you forgetting?
Well, we don't have Mike Weber anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But we should get to
Leo
11.
looks like he's online, you guys.
Leo is? Oh, let's bring him in. That would be great.
Yeah, Leo's online.
Okay,
Can you
excellent.
promote him, Carolyn?
Yes, would you please promote him?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you
Oh,
could do
yeah.
it.
I could, but I opened the
No,
wrong
no, no,
thing.
you might not be able to. Hold on.
4, that makes 8, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, who are we missing now?
Michelle.
There he is, great. Thank you, Leo, so glad you're here.
I'm totally sorry, folks. I totally blew space. I fantasized about a free night without a meeting. Yeah.
Didn't work, did it?
I almost sent a reminder today thinking it's a Monday, we never meet on Monday, is that the weekend? And then I should
It
have.
totally did. And then I found I'm like, oh my god, I'm supposed to be in a meeting. I almost like, this is, anyway.
We have this notice. There's a board and committee recognition night in Medfield on October 16th. It's at the Zulu Gallery. If you would like to go, just send a RSVP to Brittany. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go because we have spent hours ticketing. So please do go. It's a lovely event.
I don't know, Carolyn, it does conflict with a very big night for the high school soccer team at Gillette Stadium. So,
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
but I'll try.
What? 6 p.m. 6 p.m. is the event, the start of the event.
Yeah, in fairness, I don't think Brittany knew that that was gonna be a conflict, because that's a big night. The girls and boys will play in July.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Also, before we start, if you remember back in June, I mentioned that a member of the Energy Committee, Andrew, is going to be our connection, and he's here tonight. Did you want to just say hi to everybody?
Yes, hi. My name's Andrew Gerald. I've been on the Energy Committee since 2021, I want to say, and we just wanted to kind of come out here and sort of lend our support and assist and let you guys know that we're here to assist you guys any way, shape, or form that we can. So that's kind of really as far as I've gotten from the committee, but they asked me to come and, attend the meeting, so here I am.
Thank you and welcome.
Andrew joined us on the tour,
Yes, yeah, I went to the Pine Hill Elementary School.
so we got to see the school. All right. Okay, so there was a MSBA board meeting, a small meeting with us. They called the superintendent, and a few of us went, and they presented their enrollment data and projections for what a future building in Medfield should be for 4th and 5th grade. You have the whole packet to look at. It's been up online. Bill's going to actually share it right up here and talk about some of the things they said to us as we looked through their data, and then we'll talk about their conclusion and what we think about the data and where they got to.
Yeah, so I'll roll through this fairly quickly. Because the good news is that it doesn't, the data doesn't deviate a ton from what we've looked at previously, right? So you guys remember we've looked at kind of 2 different studies to date. The Future Think study that we commissioned on our own, and then the NASDAQ projections that the schools subscribe to. So we had 2 sets of data. This represents a 3rd set of data. So now we'll just walk through what they walked us through real quick, just for everyone's benefit, and then we can kind of go over the summary and kind of what it means. So I'm going to skip to this page 3. This is just the MSBA process. So the process from here is effectively reviewing their projections, getting aligned on the number, and then ultimately giving them a green light, at which point they'll issue an enrollment letter to us. I think we sign the letter, and then it goes back to them for the approval to the full board. So, assuming we get to a vote at some point here in the near future, we would hopefully be in their December board meeting to then move forward out of Module 1 and into Module 2, which will start to get into the part of the process where we're selecting an OPM and then an architect. So that would be exciting. So in terms of the data, really the way that they build their projections was kind of in 3 parts. They start with, this is the top half of the page here. They essentially start with presumed female population in the town of Medfield. And so the blue line on each of these 2 charts, so the left hand is total females, right hand side is females 20 to 39 years. So they start with that. The blue line is actuals, the orange line is projected. So they start with a baseline essentially to get to a projected birth rate. They then take that data and they apply a fertility rate against the population to then calculate a projected birth rate. So if you look on the bottom hand of the slide here, right, the blue line is the historical births by year, and then they get to their projected line in terms of what they expect to happen in the out years. Now, I'll show you in a second, but you'll see that the projected line is higher than the historicals. The way that they do their averages, it's weighted into the total calculus, but it doesn't inform the total kind of future projection, their enrollment recommendation. And I'll kind of walk you through that. So don't get too worried by the fact that there's a little bit of this hockey stick in the yellow line above the blue line, because it kind of gets averaged out when they do their math. That make sense? Okay. So like the general, formula that they're applying, everything's, super logical and data-driven. Right, so the first thing that first page, what it does is it's trying to calculate an assumed birth rate, right? So then in order to figure out how many kids are gonna be in the schools, then you have to calculate some birth to school enrollment kind of ratio, right? And that's what this next part of the calculation is doing. It's looking historically, how many births were there in Medfield? And then on a 6-year lag, how many kindergarten enrollments were there that followed? Right, so it's saying for every birth, how many children enroll in kindergarten in Medfield, when it's time for them to become kindergartners. And so you'll see, that they've run this calculation over time. You see the difference is about a 1.6x ratio. So for every birth, 1.6 kids enrolls in kindergarten, right? And that's just a factor of, Medfield has a big population of families that move into town when their kids are of kindergarten age. So that's picking that up. And then, right, so that gets us to, that takes us, so first part of the calculation, we assumed how many kids are gonna be born. Next piece of the calculation is we assumed how many of them are gonna enroll in kindergarten. And then the last piece of the calculation is say, how many people from kindergarten make it to 4th and 5th grade, which is ultimately, what we're working on is a 4th and 5th grade school. And so that's the bottom part of this calculation here, which is this, what they call survival ratio. So I talked about the birth to kindergarten at 1.6x, right? And then what happens is essentially you pick up students along the way. So there's a 3% or 3.7% rise in the population as you work yourself from kindergarten to 1st grade, another 2% as you go from 1st to 2nd, another 1 and change percent as you go from 2nd to 3rd. And then essentially 4th, 5th actually becomes essentially the high water mark of the population in our schools, at which point it starts to decline, right? So you see a 1% decline going from 5th to 6th, 3% from 6th to 7th. A little bit of function of then, kids either pursuing a different path for education, whether private school or something else, and then, as it goes through the rest of through grade 12, right? So the math that they walk through all kind of really super logical, makes sense. Any questions on that?
I totally do not intend to be the fly on this. I think we need to keep this project moving. But I was concerned, I was impressed by the story Bob Worth told about how in Foxborough a substantial, at least a number of families you're seeing, grandparents own a home, children move into the home, they have kids who attend the Foxborough schools. And I think Jeff said he's seeing a little bit of that starting up in Medfield as well. I sort of follow all these statistics, but I just wondered that this doesn't seem to take that into account.
A little bit. I think that's, to the extent that you had this, female population trend being higher than what it's been historically, that's where you would pick it up, right? That this is assuming that there's, right, if you look at the dots, as of the 2020 census, there was, let's just assume the dot is 1,150 females, 20 to 39, right? As you look out into projections, it's saying by 2035, they expect that number to be closer to kind of 1,350. Right? So that's it's a 20% increase almost, right? Going from 1,150 to 1,350, 200 or 1,100 is kind of 18%. That's sizable.
Yeah, okay.
Now I'm going to kind of contradict that in a second. I'm going to show you how they got into their enrollment projections based on averages, which kind of waters that down a little bit.
Okay.
But something as we have our discussion that's worth discussing. Okay. All right. So let's go to part 3 of the math. Okay. So this is their this is essentially their waterfall. And I apologize if people don't have a problem, but it's hard to see on the screen here. Right. This waterfalls out population by grade by year, and it goes back 10 years, and it goes forward 10 years, right? So this kind of line here is where we are right now in the 2025, 2026 school year. And so what happens is, as you get further into the as you get further out on the curve, right? So as you work your way from 2025 to the 2034, 2035 projections, right? Now you're getting into a lot more assumptions as opposed to real data, right? And that's what they're kind of showing us here is that this dark orange represents its projected data, but we know what the birth rate is for all these years, right? So for the class that's going to be in 8th grade in 2030, 2031, well, you kind of work all that back, and they're in either kindergarten or first grade now, so we can follow them through based on the survival rates. So, everything in this dark orange here would be pretty well known based on what we know today. So we know how many kids are actually in our schools as of today, and we know those survival rates over time. So absent some material change, right, which would be hard to value, either some material change in how people move into the town or out of the town, or how houses transact, or new building units. Like, this should be fairly well known as we sit here today. This lighter yellow gets a little bit more subjective, right? So as we sit here in 2025, we know the births, right? We know how many people were born in like 2021, so we kind of know this. And then, so these are all, this light yellow is all where we know the birth rate, but we don't know the birth to kindergarten rate yet. So now the projection gets like a little bit more subjective, but still pretty good because all these births have happened as of today, theoretically, right? And then when you get out to the 2029, 2030 school year, now you've got a little more far afield because now we're working on assumed births because these births haven't happened yet. And so what you see happen, and I put together just a little summary slide that I'll hand out in a second. What you see is the projections start to kind of diverge a little bit as you get into like the 2033, 2034 school year. Does that kind of just help frame the data in terms of like how they thought about it, what's real versus what's projected, just in terms of as we get grounded in it?
That's very helpful.
Okay. All right. So now let's get to what their number is, right? And so what they've done is essentially taken this 10 years, so from the current school year forward 10 years, so essentially from, if you can see my cursor, like this line down, and they've essentially averaged it on a per year basis. So over the next 10 years, your average 4th grade is going to be 215, and your average 5th grade is going to be 209. Okay? And so based on that, sorry, my little cursor thing is blocking the punchline right now at the bottom, but so there it is. Right? So based on that, they're taking the 215 plus 209 and saying that their base enrollment is 424 is where they think they want us to be. Their base enrollment prior to adjustments. And we're going to talk about the one big adjustment they have in a second. Okay. So this is where, Pete, I was saying that they do have a little bit of a hockey stick on the birth rate because of an increased female population. But when you roll it through how they're calculating this 215 and this 209, they really only have kind of like 3 years of the 10 years that they're averaging that factor in that presumed future increased population. Everything else, the actual enrolled for the next handful of years, and then the actual births we know make up the majority of like their projection from which we're creating this average. That kind of make sense? Okay, so 424 becomes the base. And now let's talk about the one big adjustment, which is, so it's just some graphs in terms of what they expect. So they go through and do essentially a calculation of how did the change in housing units in town translate into change in students. And they go back and look at it over the past handful of years, but the simple math is that they get to a ratio about every new housing unit creates about 1/10 of a student in 4th and 5th grade. So really, really simple math. For every 10 houses, you get 1 4th and 5th grade student. It's what they've seen historically. And then so they took, as we submitted the survey with all the data, they took the one big adjustment we know about in terms of housing, right? Like historically, as you look at Medfield, it's had a little bit of growth, but pretty muted growth compared to other towns in other areas in terms of like new housing units. And so we told them about the state hospital. That's going to be 334 units. Their math is kind of like, hey, well, you get a 10th of a student for every housing unit. There's 334 new units. We would expect that to equate to about 33 new kids. They asked for additional data because they apply a different ratio for 2-bedroom units versus say like a studio unit. And so I believe, I'm looking at Jeff, but I believe we kind of documented that for them.
We give, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Christine was feeding me the info and I was feeding it to them, yeah.
Yes, yes, so
Very
we
system.
told them, Trinity had projected 70 students, based on the apartments, because not all the apartments are multi-bedrooms. Some are studios, some are 1-bedroom.
So you wind up in a world where, and I'm maybe just gonna say it here, because I'm blanking on the final number they landed on, but they kind of said, all right, 424, it's kind of plus, 7 to 10 to the new housing development. Now you're at, 434. So I think that they were gonna, I forgot the number.
Yeah, they ended up at 445.
Yeah. So, right, so 445 is the number that they, projected. And,
That's 10 classrooms.
and so they, right, so then they came back and said, let us know what you think, and if you guys are good, we'll issue the letter, and if you want to discuss it more, we can talk about it. And so, so let me just pause there, right? So that's, that was essentially the math that they walked us through in terms of, everything and how they got there. Okay. So let me flip, so I'm gonna hand this out real quick. This isn't new information. This is just, I laid out all the projections. Let's take one pass it down. Just side by side, just I think it would help make it easier for people.
Thank you.
For those on the line, I'll project it. So again, this is not new information. All I did was take the data from the MSBA. Right, so this is the first column. So there, September, and remember these projections have different dates. So there's a little bit different information. But so the MSBA projection from September 25, the Future Think Moderate case from April 24. NASDAQ is from March 25, and then I also dropped in the Future Think High case from April 24. And what I did just kind of lay them out and then create an average. And then just to see where the data either aligned or diverged, you can kind of see in the first the first handful of years, just kind of highlight on the screen here, right? The projections are all within a handful of students of of the average each. And then when you get down a little bit further, right, as you get more into projections. It starts to diverge a little bit. The Future Think high case is really high, but the moderate, NASDAQ, Future Think, and MSBA are kind of all in the same spot. And then, where you really see the larger divergence is in those last 2 years, right? And that's where we are now projecting how many births they're going to be to figure out, essentially 10 years from now, how many kids are going to be in 4th and 5th grade. And that's where you get a little wide with a Future Think moderate cases in the 425 range, but MSBA is at 495 and NASDAQ's at 477. I think the averages are probably a touch skewed by the fact I'm including the Future Think twice. I'm including their moderate case and the highest case. So just for sanity check, I'm just going to delete this live, and you'll see how the averages change. Right. So when I do that, you see a little bit more clearly that they're all in the same ballpark for the next 8 years, plus or minus. You'll call it plus or minus 20, right? MSBA is 12 over the average. Future Think is 9 below the average. So that's it's a delta of 20. So call it plus or minus 5% over what we're talking about. And then again, you get kind of wide as it starts to diverge. Is this idea of what's going to happen 10 years from now, where MSBA is a little bit higher at 444 and then 495. Future Think is a little bit lower. Again, this all just comes into this projected female population times the birth rate to get to some assumed population. And so, again, I'll pause just for either the people here or Leo, Michelle, if anybody has any questions in terms of just like across now the 3 data sets we have, what we're looking at in terms of the numbers.
So they go out essentially 10 years.
Yeah, and I think this is our part, is we're building a school for
50
or 60 or 70.
Yeah, but we only
That's
go.
the tricky part.
It is. Sometimes sometimes it's helpful too, just to look back. If you go from like the 70s in Medfield, the population of Medfield has not changed that much in the 30 years I've been here. It goes up a little bit, but it has not changed greatly. There's turnover of houses, that. So yeah, it's hard to realize how far we're building out and know that they're just projecting 10 years.
I went in, Christine, hopefully this tracks with what you guys know, because I just use kind of the Google machine to look at it. But I was kind of like the sanity checkup, right? All right, based on where we are today in terms of enrollment, like what do you have to believe to get to 500 kids in 4th and 5th grade? And there's about like 170 kind of real estate transactions a year is what I saw like in town. I don't know if that kind of loosely tracks, right? And so, if you said, all right, like you had to grow the population by essentially 25% to go from 400 kids to 500 kids. Like, what would you have to believe? You have to believe that probably like interest rates come down substantially, somehow the cost of housing gets cheaper, create a giant turnover of some of the inventory in town, right? Do that will happen over time, but we'll see. At Pete's point, maybe you have to believe in like, household formation, how that works, changes into the future where you have more multi-generational families living in town for longer periods of time, right? Like multi-generational families, like you probably see it from like, newborn to like kindergarten first, like as you get into 4th, 5th, you would assume that the families are maybe a little more established at that point, but who knows? So there's a little bit of obviously like something like, COVID, there's a little bit of a cohort there where there was increased a higher level of births, and like, that's like, from a data perspective, was like if you were gonna bet that, based on the historical births in Medfield, that you would have like 130 births a year, that'd be like a 0.01% probability. It was a 1 in 100 year event essentially, from a data perspective. So you'd have to believe that things would change, you know, fairly substantially, not that they couldn't. But like, I don't know, I feel like, you know, somewhere in that 450 to 500 feels, from my perspective, from, you know, the data that I've looked at, feels pretty reasonable. But again, it's like, you know, you get past 10 years now, and there's not a lot of, you're just going on, you know, projections that are exactly that. So, I don't know how, like, you know, yeah, I welcome other feedback from whoever.
Thoughts, questions about all this?
I guess, what choice do we have?
Yeah.
So,
So they approved 445, they come back and say, sorry, we're looking for 475. Can you negotiate, or is it?
yeah, so it's an interesting question, and they invited us to come back if you didn't. But historically, that hasn't been a successful path. And I think the big question would be, it'd be different if they're asking you to build a school for 600 kids and you were in 440, because then you're building rooms and it's costing a lot, and it's hard for the community to say, why are you doing this? In this case, when we talked before, we talked about 500 as we knew it was high, but we thought it was safe, so we wanted a few more rooms than what they're saying. But you could accept what they're saying, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but then we could add a couple rooms. We just wouldn't get the reimbursement piece when we go above their 10, but that may be worth it for our peace of mind. Like, okay, well, we want to move the process forward. So we'll take what you said, we're ready to go, and then maybe we, in the design, decide, you know, we'd like 2 more classrooms just to be safe, and we just know that. Unless we have a reason.
And they want you to build in 10% growth as well, so that's not in this 445 either, so.
Oh, I
Once
forgot
we
that.
get to design phase and all that, you gotta build in the 10%
Oh, you
growth.
do?
Yeah, so that becomes part of them. I mean,
Oh,
a lot of this stuff
so
with
that's another-
classrooms and all that, that all shakes out during the design phase once we get through that.
So, in other words, so if we built in 10%, that kicks it up to like 485 probably.
So we're just about the number we
Oh,
said.
yeah, okay, I didn't
Okay,
know about that.
okay, I didn't notice that. That's all
Unless they
right.
changed, but they made us do that last time. It was 10%.
Yeah, okay.
Build in 10% growth.
That is super important, because I was thinking if you just do that anyhow, and it maybe not.
And you still can do that if you want.
Yeah, and it, you know, it won't, you know, we get money back for eligible expenses. So, you know, the whole way through that process, they're gonna be telling us what they expect and what they want, and then we're gonna say, okay, that's great for us, or maybe we're gonna change it just a little bit. So that's okay for us to do if we think for Medfield, right? It's worth it. But if they say 10%, we add to that, we're right in the ballpark where we said.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the projections from NASDAQ, right? Year 2034, 477, and MSBA 195. Well, so I think the 10% makes it
We're close.
look pretty close.
Makes it more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. How about you guys online, Michelle, Leo, Eileen, knowing there could be a 10% bump in there when we get to the design part, does that make you guys more comfortable, or are you fine where it is?
It does make me feel more comfortable if there's the 10%. I think that's, you know, with the unknowns, the growth in the greater Boston area that continues. I don't think it's as rapid as I thought last time, but I think, you know, 10 years from now, if there's a rapid spike, you don't want to be busting at the seams again, right, either. So I think, you know, one or 2 classrooms worth is a lot different than, you know, 6. So I think that 10% is probably a good contingency number in there. And I think that's probably a question to ask Jeff. That's still legit, because if it is, I feel comfortable with the number.
Hey, Leo, like, in terms of how we're thinking about it, are there any material, like, thoughts in terms of how your district's dealing with it on your other project?
I don't know the demographics as well of the town. So we just opened the bids on the design on last Wednesday. We did have 8 bidders, so which is healthy. So we're excited about that. But I will dive into that question. But matter of fact, I can ask my OPM if that's general. Matter of fact, she's always up, so I'll text her right now and see what she comes back with. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the 10% is helpful in regards to having a buffer. I mean, I think what we see right now is the schools continuously being in a place where we're stretched for space in places outside of Dale Street and the elementary level. It would be good to have a little bit of a buffer. I also think, I know Robert's not here tonight, but I think he pointed out that he started out thinking that he had extra classrooms and now he does not, right? So there's always going to be a way for us to utilize that space to continue to enhance the education of the students of Medfield. So I support that 10% buffer.
So what if it's not 10%? What if it's not, I mean, last time that's what we had in our conversation and we were told to do that. I don't know if that's still, I mean, that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
If they don't, I mean, I would suggest we could do it just for our
Yeah.
own comfort in Medfield and explain
Yeah.
to the community that, you
Well,
know,
they-
this is just a little bit of a safe piece for us. We felt that. I mean, it's not like there aren't 100 uses for a room that isn't a classroom at a moment in a school.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
many, many things we could do. But I think what I got from that other conversations, we all would rather be safe than sorry. That we all were more comfortable, like, in case, right? Because like Robert said, you don't want to stick a modular on a brand new building,
I
right?
mean, I think my first step would be to go have a conversation with them.
Yes.
Like, hey, help me understand, like, we have 3 projections that show growth as you get into the out years. We don't want to be left short, and you don't want us to be left short either. Would you consider moving it up to 475 in recognition of that?
That's what I would do.
Right, and then if they say no, then you say, okay, well then, maybe we'll build it at risk with our own money, but, then 440.
Do we ask the question first though about the 10%? Because the 10%
Yeah,
comes
yeah, I'll
back.
find that out first.
All right, so
And
we
then-
find that out, and then if it's there, we're at the number that we kind of wanted, so we would be comfortable.
Yep.
Eileen, did you want to add anything?
No, listening to the conversation, I think it makes sense, and especially walking through Pine Hill last week, we saw that even after the design, there were some rooms that didn't actually fit the plan the way it was intended. So if you have rooms, you could have the option to shift some things around. That's a win-win.
All right, why don't we just check on the public now, just to sort of get thoughts? If we have any questions out there. I do not see a question. Oh, I do. Okay, how do I let
me do
Chris
it.
in? Sorry.
No, you're fine. I need to make you a co-host. Hold on.
Oh, is that why I didn't? I clicked it, but it didn't work.
You should be all set.
Okay, now I'm the co-host. All right, so Chris,
Can you hear me okay?
we can, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. No, the only 2 things that just jumped out at me is that, we're in a unique situation with a grade 4 and 5 school versus like Robert's school, I think he's, kindergarten or pre-K to 4. So he's gonna see more, probably pressure in different grades. Whereas we're looking at a 4 and 5 school, there is attrition that happens at certain points, like between 3rd grade, I was looking at the DESI data. There's attrition that happens in a grade 4 to 5 school as well, where you have kids moving off to private school. It's just a unique situation, I think. If we were dealing with, I think, younger elementary school children, I would be much more eager to increase the number based on the MSBA projection. But I mean, I think where you guys are with, just looking at that 10% that's already built in, I think that makes total sense. But I do just think that you have to just also take into account that it is a grade 4 to 5 school, which is, it's kind of just a unique scenario in terms of how it's going to impact your own down the road. So those just my thoughts.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So,
So from here, we don't vote on the number tonight, we do have the numbers, the voting numbers to do so. And we go back to the MSBA and see if they could agree to 475.
Another way to do it would be to vote it with conditions, which means that between now and when they're setting up that December 12th meeting that we would like to get in, we can have Jeff, talk with them and handle and figure out, but he can follow the guidelines of our vote.
So they're gonna want you to sign that enrollment letter.
Yeah,
So that's the trigger for everything. So if you don't get that enrollment letter signed, you don't get invited in December.
yes.
So I think that's kind of the big thing and what they're waiting on is whether or not we agree on that 445, and then they'll start the letter, get it out, and then that process starts. But if you don't agree to a number and you have another meeting, all of a sudden there's no room for you in December. So, I think my advice would be to kind of look at it closely tonight and see if you can live with it and move forward. But, that's not my fault.
And know that we're just gonna check out the 10% piece, and we do have a plan what we can do if the 10% piece doesn't happen in terms of, the other way,
So,
be to wait.
I'm not, you'll probably feel like I'm trying to put you on the spot,
No,
which is
no.
really not what I'm trying to do.
No.
But you pick up the phone, you say, hi, we had a good meeting, we had a good discussion, we appreciate your feedback. The school has, the school building committee has one member who is a principal in Foxborough who thought he had the Taj Mahal, and 3 years later, he's bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
And we took that story, the SBC took that story to heart, and we'd like to see if we could increase the number to 475. And maybe they just say, no, forget it, our number's our number.
Yeah, I don't think I would use that as examples when I call them, but yeah, I think to Chris's point earlier, you do get more kids that come in the younger grades than you would at grades 4 and 5. So I can see why that would happen at a K to 5 school or K to 4 school. I think I lean more towards the data that Bill presented, looking at our 2 other sources and say, okay, we're still looking at a higher number than 445. Can we, look in that direction?
Okay.
I will say they're never really, when we went last time, and Christine was there as well, is that, they said most times districts are fighting with us for more kids. You guys, we're making you have a larger school than what you're asking. So it's almost the reverse of what happened last time. I'm not so sure they're going to be open to adding more kids, but they may be. I don't know, they were adding kids when we were throwing that data out the other day. They were adding more kids to it, I think at one point they said it could go up to 460 based on, if the construction or something that they said. So, they may be open to adding additional seats for sure.
But, so, if we accept it by signing an enrollment letter,
Yeah.
and then we're in the design, it can shift at that point?
And that's pretty tight at that point. That letter's kind of rock solid.
Oh, it is, okay,
Yeah,
that's what I just
yeah,
wanted,
yeah.
okay.
I think if,
I thought they said they would revisit it if there was material new information,
yeah.
so like if a new.
but that's not new what you presented tonight, right? So they wouldn't.
Right,
they
and
wouldn't-
it's like, listen,
They already have
like,
that.
based on what's coming down the pike in town,
Yeah.
like it's hard to
Yeah,
see.
but
what would
that's
be-
what they looked at, that same data we gave them that data, and they looked at, that was part of their calculation, so.
They added at the meeting more students
They did.
based on what we said about Trinity.
Yeah,
But like we do have, right, I got the sense that we have a little bit, we don't have a ton of time, but we have a little bit of time.
We have time.
To have at least
For
one,
sure.
I would take the one volley with them and see what we get.
yeah, I think, what did Diane say, 45 to 60, whatever it was time. for
I
sure.
did ask, I said,
Yeah.
how soon do we need to vote to get that December meeting, because the next one's February. So,
I think everybody in this room is in agreement, we want to get in December.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
So what, can I suggest this? Like,
Yes.
maybe Jeff, you can get feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and, so we can so choice for the group, right? We can either kind of like conditionally vote tonight, and if it's 445 plus 10% during the design process, right? Jeff can so we can make that decision, that's path one. Or path two is, let Jeff get the feedback, and then feedback to us, and then if we need to hop on a, 15-minute, Zoom meeting to, just say yes, approve, and vote, I presume we could do that.
Jeff, who physically has to sign that enrollment letter?
The chair of the select board, chair of the school committee, and the superintendent.
Okay, so you would be able to get those three without us having to meet again?
Correct. But I think you have to make the vote. I mean, you have to
Right.
to vote the number.
So the feedback I just got from my OPM was that they are targeting to stick with the number on the enrollment letter.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that if we have a number that we feel comfortable with using the data, that, we probably may want to go back and see if they're willing to come up and meet that number, or at least get closer. I think it would probably behoove us. But also ask if they do the 10%, they didn't seem to think that was, but they said to go to the MSBA and ask. But
Yeah, I got the same thing. One of my colleagues is building a school right now, and he said they didn't factor in the 10% with him. So that's why I said, what if they don't? Because
Right,
that was 6 years ago, so
okay.
they might not be doing that.
So,
Well, one thing I am sitting here thinking is, and Christine, you correct me if my numbers are wrong here, but I know when we looked at the complex that was built next to the state hospital, there was a rather high number of anticipated kids that were joining the school system. I think it ended up being a fraction of what was anticipated. It was like 11, and I think they originally set aside like 33. So when we were on that conference call with MSBA and we were talking about the state hospital, they kind of went high on numbers as to what they anticipated the student count would be in that complex. And I sit here today thinking, I'm not certain that the state hospital is going to bring in that the high number that they were shooting for, even if we go off some of the current developments where we built in numbers for students and it never even panned out. There's like a lot of empty nesters ended up in the complex next to the state hospital. And, one of the questions was going to happen with the apartments at the state hospital come 2030. So if we're wrestling with this number and we're concerned that the MSBA may say, stick to the number that's on the enrollment letter, I wouldn't have a super hard time with knowing that the numbers may be off.
yeah, and maybe the 480, coming back at 10% might be kind of high, maybe 465, if we were to take average classroom size, Jeff, right, the cap of 22 and divide that through,
Yeah, so the 480 gets at 24 kids per classroom. At the proposed number of 445 is 22 and a quarter kids per classroom. So the 480 gets it to 24 kids, which is the top end of your school committee recommended policy on class
Steve's
size for
really
that
good
grade.
at slicing kids.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
rooms.
yeah,
And
slicing and
classrooms,
dicing.
shade.
Yeah, so that's, I guess that's where the concern comes in. We don't, we're trying to, can we live with 24? Yes, would we rather 22? I mean, I've been looking for Steve. Look at his hair.
Greater by the day.
I'm not sure actually where we're leaving it then at the moment in terms of us voting.
Well, what
We
I'm
asked-
hearing Jeff say in extremely diplomatic fashion is you're better off taking the MSBA number. If we want to go to the town down the road and say, the MSBA allocated money on the assumption of 445, we think we should build according to 475, but that extra money has to come from us. I mean, that's a fight for, or a discussion, it's something for down the road. But I think we want to keep this train moving down the tracks.
But I do think it's worth a shot talking to MSBA and saying, we had a conversation last night, we think we might need 475, 480, would you want to have a conversation? get everyone back that was on the last week,
Okay.
back on a call again and have a conversation. I think we have time to do that.
Yeah,
All right.
I
Then
think
what
we
we
do.
need to do is, we have
And
to
they might just say
schedule-
no, but at least, you know,
Yeah.
ask the question.
Okay, so we have to,
Difference on you. They split the difference between 460.
yeah.
Can I?
We always
so
ask
we're
for
talking-
more.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, but,
Okay.
I'm sorry, did someone else?
Michelle.
Michelle, go
Yeah,
ahead.
right. I just wanted to say, so when we're talking about, while we haven't gotten to the point yet where we've decided the amount of classrooms, we have been floating around 10 per grade, right? So if we do look at what we just said in regards to 24 would be the cap for 10 grades times 2 gets us to 480, right, in regards to students per classroom. So when we look at the difference between 445 and 480, and we're asking the MSBA for additional enrollment, what we're looking at in that space is what? The cafeteria is bigger, additional bathrooms? I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, the classroom, if we end up going that route for classroom, we're kind of in that space anyway. So when we're looking at space per kid, we're looking at increasing which things when we're making this request for more students?
So it's the reimbursement as well, so the reimbursement based on those numbers. So yeah, the size of all those things would be designed accordingly for an additional 40 students or thereabouts. So price per square footage based on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question, Michelle, right? Like, does that equal one more bathroom? Does it equal, you know,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
like an extra, 300 or, 1,200 square feet in the cafeteria, right?
I don't think the gym would have to change. It's not gonna matter in terms of class size for more kids for a gym. Cafeteria, maybe if you had 5 classes in there at once, 4, for 5 is another 20 kids, so that would make a little
Yeah,
difference.
we would.
Yeah.
On the table.
So-
On the floor.
My simple point is that I'd rather do the asking so that if it's a year and a half, 2 years out,
Mhm.
and we're saying, hi, we'd like to add 2 more classrooms. Really? Did you ask the MSBA if you could increase the
Right, so,
enrollment?
yeah.
And then have the associated reimbursements follow? Or did you just decide this now? So I would rather be able to stand there and look people in the eyes and say, yes, we asked and we got it, or yes, we asked and we were told no.
Okay.
But I would much rather ask and be able to have that to use year and a half, 2 years down the road.
That makes sense to me too. So and my mind's thinking about how quickly this can be done, and we would need another meeting, and I need 8 people at that meeting to vote in order to get us in that line. I don't know how.
but as Bill said, suppose either odd scenario, they say, nope, 445 is the number, not budging. Okay, that's one decision. Or they say, okay, you guys have a discussion, we want 475. They reluctantly say, we'll go to 460. We say, great. Then you call a quick meeting, as I think it was Bill who said this. We do it by Zoom, and it's a 15-minute, we've had this discussion here, and we say, okay, here's the
We
results of the
update what
discussion.
happened, and then we
And
vote.
let's vote on the
Okay.
enrollment reduction, be it 445 or 460, or whatever, and let's get it done.
Or we're just making a rule, I guess, like, we could vote that to approve an enrollment between 445 and 480 based on pending final discussion for the MSBA.
Well, that's the other thing we can do. We can make a vote with contingencies in it, so it's clear what we're voting
Okay.
for, and that lets, I don't know how long it will take Jeff for MSB to have that meeting,
I'm sending her an email right now for tomorrow.
right on
That's-
top of it.
that's where-
And then, that way we've given him permission to negotiate with the team, and then
Just vote
get
to
an
Jeff do
answer,
whatever he wants.
and then we move ahead.
Uh,
I mean, we're not gonna say no, which,
well, we-
You'd love that one.
Bite my tongue.
Yep.
Do you want to do that so the vote's not the holdup and people don't have to jump back on?
to me, it's a little easier, because you need 2 days to post the vote, and, you can't do a holiday, there's,
All right, let's do that.
You need to know enrollment of no less than 445 and no higher than 500.
yeah,
Yeah. Great.
I mean, that
Although I'd like to make a motion. No, actually, any more public participation before we?
Oh, let me see if there's any more hands. No, I think that was already Chris's hand before. Chris, unmute if you have another question. I think that's your hand from before.
And,
Okay.
all right, so I would like to make a motion to approve the MSBA design enrollment between a number of 445 to 500 pending final discussions with the MSBA.
And a second for that.
Second.
All right, we're gonna go around and we're gonna say, so, we'll do online first. Michelle,
Selkirk, yes.
Leo,
Leo Brown, yes.
Carolyn Casey, yes?
John Cena, yes.
Bob Meany, yes?
Peter Michelson, yes.
Tony Papantonis, yes.
Bill Warren, yes.
Okay. Nice job. Very nice, everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Pretty exciting. We're gonna move. So, just so you know, they told us the date was December 12th. Have that right? Of when they'll have their board meeting. So what we had before was a small meeting just with us and 3 people. We didn't say it was 3 people from the MSBA in that meeting. But the December 12th is a board meeting and many towns are there. And then they, move towns.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah, public meeting, anybody can go, and then they move towns into, the next steps or whatever the case may be that they want to do at a board meeting.
Do they do it by Zoom or is it in-person
It was
presentation?
Zoom, that's all, everything they seem to do is Zoom, right?
Yeah, so just to clarify, I know you guys took that vote, we appreciate that. My goal tomorrow is to have a conversation with Carly and ask her to schedule a meeting with the same group that was on the week of the 24th with the same people from Medfield. That's what I'm doing.
Yes,
Okay, perfect.
yeah,
And I would tease it and say, like, we appreciate all their feedback. The committee had, some questions about.
Yeah, that's what I put in the email.
Yeah, the out years of projections,
Yeah.
like, we want to make sure we're not sure.
Okay.
that's great. Okay. Moving on to the agenda. We went to the school tour last week. Some of us went to Westwood, and I just wondered if anyone wanted to share anything about the Pine Hill School. And remind everybody that our November meeting was also to go on a tour. Jeff set it up with Ashland.
Ashland, yeah, confirmed it this week, so we're good.
Okay, 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
Okay. Is it the Mary Mindus one or the Warren?
Minus or minus?
Okay.
Will you send out a street address?
I will.
Thank you.
So that would be at 4 o'clock, and that's on the first Wednesday. I hope everybody can come. I really think seeing the school and seeing what people do just is gonna make us that much better at thinking about designs and what we want. So I will be posting that as we get closer. But anybody want to share anything from the trip to Pine Hill?
The first Wednesday is November 5th. That's what we-
Yes. Okay. All right, quiet group tonight. All right, well, I did send a letter thanking the superintendent and the principal for letting us go and take a look. Okay, so on Medfield Day, a lot of people stopped by. Medfield Day was packed this year, just people everywhere. The shirts were a big hit. There was a glitch with the code on the back of the shirts, unfortunately. The code goes to the constant contact page, but it says this is a preview, information won't be stored. So for the people who signed up, they didn't really sign up. So that is disappointing, and we will figure out what we can do going forward. But the color was great, it got attention, people asked, they stopped, they looked at it, and we'll just have to figure out whether we keep wearing them when we cover it or make new ones, or we can do that at a later date. And for those of you who don't have a shirt, I have plenty of extras, so. We heard a lot of support for what we're doing. People asked about where we were, the updates. Bill made a fabulous timeline for those who weren't there. It's huge. We hung it on the side of the booth, and it shows where we are, where we're going, and all the steps, and where we hope to be in terms of building and moving in. We also put that in a small version on the back of the Medfield Day handout. The handout had some common questions we've been getting lately, and then the timeline in the back. And those were both well received. So we can keep using that timeline as we move forward. We heard, a lot of different things. People asked, well, what's happening with Dale? Some people didn't know we had voted on the location yet, so we had to talk about that. Talked about the timeline. Anything else? Am I missing, Pete?
Well, this is not a statistically relevant sample of anything, but a number of the people I talked to, or I think that we talked to, said, can't you do something and include a BAF
yes.
center in
Yep.
it? Which I'm not opposed to, but I'm concerned that it bumps the number up, the cost number. The people who came by the booth tend to be people who are supportive, which is awesome. How many people walk by sort of like, and I'm not going to vote for another tax increase over these already high taxes? We simply don't know. And the concern I have is, if we try to do something that incorporates a new recreation/FAF center thing as part of this, which we'd have to pay for ourselves, the MSBA would not pay for it, that's going to bump up the number. I have no idea how much. And do people in Medfield have an appetite for that? Obviously, what I'm circling around and not quite saying is, I don't want the Dale Street project not to succeed because we've tried to tack FAF onto it. On the other hand, the need for a new FAF center couldn't be more real. So I'm spending a lot of words here and not coming to any conclusion, for which I apologize. But, quite a few people who spoke to me raised that as an issue. So it's something, and for Eileen, our purview under the bylaw is a new Dale Street school, or a replacement for the existing Dale Street school. Our purview doesn't say anything about the FAF center. So if there's going to be movement about making the FAF center a part of this, I think the select board has to pull the stroke oar on that along with the Park and Rec committee. So that's really not our bailiwick, or other than that we're going to hear a lot about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair statement, and I believe, Christine, we've made that statement before, where the lead comes from Parks and Rec. I mean, they've got to determine what they're looking to do. I, as a select board member, certainly voiced my concerns that they need something, they need to start pulling things together. They should certainly not be looking into the school board building committee to lead the way and discuss what they need for design. So right now, the focus right now is strictly on a 4th and 5th grade school until Parks and Rec comes forward and says something different. But I don't think the select board, I know certainly Gus has spoken during our meetings that we hear the concern, but it's not what this group is pulled together for.
The train is moving down the tracks. We're going to focus on a new school. And so if something's going to happen, it should happen sooner rather than later.
Yes, because once we're into the design mode.
Yeah, once we're into design mode, we're not going to keep going back and forth, forth.
We want to keep moving ahead. We need to do this we need to do a great job in as timely a fashion as we can.
Yeah.
And it would be helpful to know what's going to happen with that piece of property as we move into the design phase, to know, can we use it for field, for driveway, for access, for whatever.
Right.
We don't want to find.
I would say, Chief, it's a safe bet that if there are backhoes tearing things down, that building, which if the town's not going to support touching that, it's dropping $1 million into it. So I think we can all swallow the pill. That going to get demolished, it's just what's going to happen with Parks and Rec. And they're in a temporary place right now, they looked at a trailer, they didn't get enough funding. That's fallen on the Parks and Rec Commission. We got 5 people in town that were elected to lead the cause there, and they're great people, but they've got to pull together and decide what direction they're going to go.
Okay, anything else for Medfield Day? Any other? I thank everybody who came that day and helped out all day. Thank you very much.
Special applause for Carol and Bob, who stayed the whole day.
We're booth monitors.
He really did yeoman service.
I have a large social life, it didn't really affect me. So,
I'm with
it was
Bob.
a fine place to
It was
be.
easy, Yeah. And you know, that tent went right back home with me again, so I guess it's permanently ours now.
Yeah, Jeff actually got his table back
Got it
finally.
back today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so we didn't acquire that.
I did think, and this is down the road, because I'm thinking next year, Medfield Day, but see, I was wondering if we should do some new pictures. The pictures are, the posters
Mhm.
of areas in Dale that need fixing,
Yeah.
but they're fading a little bit.
Yeah.
They're a little hard to see. I don't
Isn't that
know.
ironic, isn't it? The pictures are fading.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pictures are fading.
What does that tell you?
Mhm.
So I was wondering, maybe, you know,
From Shelter Island.
a few
Post those up.
areas and make them into some kind of little posters. and-
Sure, if anybody wants to come over and like set up a time, I'm more than happy, you know,
All
to do
right,
that.
take pictures, and then
Yeah.
we'll just, yeah. I don't think we need really big ones again. I think we can go a little smaller, or
Yeah,
maybe we
whatever.
can do a poster with
Mhm.
several pictures. Maybe even, we could do it in sizes and I could put it online.
Okay.
But I did notice that some of the, it had gotten kind of dark, hard
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, just let me know.
Okay,
You're welcome anytime.
thank you. Anything else on that? Everybody all set for that? I don't really have much for the communications subcommittee because all we really did was get ready for Medfield Day. So that was what we did at the last meeting. Again, I want to just thank Bill because that timeline he made, people who saw it is fabulous.
That was excellent. Got a lot of comments on that.
Yeah, we did. A lot of people
A
spent a lot
visual
of
is
time
very
looking
nice.
at it. Yeah. So future agenda topics. So let's just talk about dates. So November, we take the tour. And then we're waiting for the December, hopefully get on the board meeting. Do you want to meet after that board meeting? Do you want to meet before, knowing we're going to go to it? What would people like to do?
There won't be, if we have a meeting before it, there won't be a lot to discuss, will there?
The only thing I could think that would, might be worth it is to begin to talk about the OPM process and get us sort of familiar with how that's going to go. But we could do that in December. You know, I don't know if you wait till, Jeff, how fast after you've been to a board meeting do you sort of jump into the,
Right after. Yeah, I mean, we would start probably in January getting all that going.
okay?
Yeah.
Is it worth, I just don't want to have a meeting for the sake of it, so is it worth a December meeting to say, okay, here's the steps that you do when you look for
Sure.
OPM?
Yeah, because we have one on the books now for the 3rd, right?
Yeah.
We could do that.
Want to do
Yeah,
that?
Michael could come in too, and we could sit down and go through that.
Okay, let's do that. We'll have
Okay.
you and Michaelita. That will
Sure.
be, that will be really the only item. And we'll learn more about the process, so we could sort of hit the ground running in January.
That's right.
Okay, so,
Sorry, do we still have minutes from the last meeting that we weren't able to approve?
yeah, we do, and if the chair sitting right here in my seat had been smart enough to put it on the agenda, we could have voted on it, but I forgot.
So that'll be a future agenda.
Yeah, and we have the minutes that I just edited from the last meeting. So I've now 2 sets of minutes for December. And I'm sorry, I just totally forgot to write it on the agenda. So we won't have the November regular meeting, we'll do the tour. We'll have the December one, and we'll do 2 sets of minutes, and then a presentation about how you do an OPM.
The way we framed the vote we just took, there's no need to have a maybe meeting next week or anything, right?
No,
That's framed, so we're all fine.
because we have a minimum.
Yep, perfect.
But we'll do an update.
Yep.
We'll do an update on enrollment. Okay. Any other agenda topics that I'm missing, forgetting, we need, people want? Okay, any other public participation? Let's see, any hands? All right, then, before I start copying, don't stop, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
From Pete, thank you, in a second. Thank you, Bob, and it is 8:14. There will be a short communication subcommittee meeting after this. Oh, it was Teresa.
Yes,
who
I know,
is-
I
with
figured
this,
that.
she's at the planning board. I forgot Monday is planning board. She's now chair of the planning board, so she was there. So, and Robert's at class on a Monday night. He takes class. So. There you go. All right.
And would you like a vote?
I would. I'm going to stop coughing. Michelle.
Michelle Gerke, yes.
Leo Brent, yes.
Carolyn Casey, yes.
John Bassini, yes?
Bob Meany, yes?
Peter Michelson, yes?
Tony Kaplan Thomas, yes.
Bill Warner, yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, see you.